So both were approaching the idea of organizing society in a certain way, but taking very different routes. One coming through the European Enlightenment, Jefferson, and Jinnah coming through Westminster in London, Lincoln's Inn, and his own understanding of Islam. To him, Islam meant a religiously tolerant, accepting, humanist society. His first and only Christmas as Governor General of Pakistan was spent with the Christians in a church in Karachi. Think of it. And think how many Muslim leaders today would spend Christmas with the Christian community in their countries. And we can ask Wendy that question. Not many, maybe some. So, hopeful signs, positive signs, good features, healthy features, and challenges. This is the picture. We have at the end of the book a list of recommendations which should really be heeded. And if you have any doubts, as I said, follow what's happening to General McChrystal. He's one of the few men, and I'll say this, put it on record, who seems to have understood Afghan society. He may not have understood the discipline in the army very well, that's a separate issue. But Afghan society and how to really begin to win over the majority, so therefore the Taliban are isolated and marginalized, was primarily what he and General Petraeus and Kilcullen were trying to do over the last few years. These are the people we need to be heeding, because we cannot be complacent, we cannot assume things, we cannot say there will be no problem until it happens. We are living in a turbulent world, in an interconnected world. We have every reason to be concerned. As Americans, we have 200,000 or somewhat more or less number of troops in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, all Muslim countries. We have deep relations with the Muslim world, and we have to continue having deep relations with them. We have interests in their part of the world, in the Middle East, in Central Asia, oil, gas, geopolitics. There's a kind of superpower rivalry building up, Russia, China. We can't simply walk away. We have to be there. We have to play that game, and we have to triumph. We have to win that game. And we cannot win that game unless we understand that game. You cannot play a game without knowing the rules. And as we showed in South Africa, Americans can play any game and do well at it, even taking on the British. With that, I will end, Wendy, and be happy to answer any questions.
First question, if I could. Thank you very much. It was a very moving example you gave of the 10-year-old boy who lost his mother, 10-year-old American boy who lost his mother in Pakistan. Last week, 10 days ago, we had in Pakistan, I think we all witnessed and read about a terrible attack on a Muslim sect, the Ahmadis, in Pakistan. Certainly Muslim violence on Muslims occurs there. There is certainly attacks on Muslims here, which does disturb us. But I'm more concerned about the solutions. What could you advise from your own wealth of experience on how to turn it around, how to build a more tolerant society, not just in the United States where there may be some verbal attacks, but rarely does it get more than that. But in Pakistan and elsewhere where it can get rather deadly.
This is, of course, the big question which I'm hoping is being asked in the corridors of power. Because on one level, America is pumping money into Afghanistan, Pakistan. We are literally pumping money into a huge black hole. Billions and billions and billions of dollars with all the good intentions of helping society reinforce the structures there, bring some normality, bring down the law and order situation into some kind of an ordinary situation. That's one level. But the reality is, after almost 10 years, I see nothing but breakdown of law and order everywhere. The example you just gave, 100 people killed in Lahore, in a mosque, blatantly, daytime, Friday prayer. And this is not one example. This has been taking place repeatedly. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq. Here is where I think it all went wrong. whoever's planning these things, and I know there are a lot of brilliant, extraordinary, experienced people planning them, the questions they were asking, the assumptions they had were wrong. And if they were wrong, the conclusions are wrong. You cannot have one set of assumptions and hope for a different set of conclusions. If they were there to bring some sanity and normalcy to those societies, their first step should have been to create structures that brought this semblance by creating a strong civil service structure, a judicial structure, and back that up by the police and then the army. We went about it the wrong way round. We did nothing but back up the army and then brought the police in. The army is very often the problem, not the solution in those countries. The police invariably, sometimes maybe not, but invariably is the problem. It is the civil service and the judicial which gives some hope to the ordinary Pakistani, Iraqi, or Afghan. The tragedy is that that realization has not dawned even today. I keep hearing, and I've given up even commenting on this, when you read it, I challenge you, read all the literature on Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on, Pakistan. The emphasis entirely is we are going to have the security forces, we'll have the police, we'll have the military, we'll give them more power. How it works in real life is this. You strengthen the Afghan police, which is what's happening. You're pumping in billions of dollars. You give them all these weapons, you give them all these helicopter gunships and so on. The men manning the police are from the Northern Alliance. In Afghanistan, it is purely a tribal conflict. They don't see this in terms of law and order. They see this in terms of a tribal conflict. The Northern Alliance against the Pashtun. The police is almost entirely Northern Alliance. And they are having a field day patrolling in Pashtun areas and playing havoc with the Pashtuns. Read the stories, dreadful stories coming out of how the police with their force, with the authority of the state, are able to brutalize local Pashtuns. Do you think when the Americans leave, which they're going to leave this year, next year, 5 years from now, the Pashtuns are not going to take revenge? In a society that is motivated entirely by revenge, those are tribal societies. They're not American societies. They're not being conducted according to the United States Constitution. They are being conducted by their local tribal code, which is still prevalent. So we should have turned this round by going in there and saying, okay, it's going to take 1/100th of what we are spending on the army. It'll take a lot of effort, but we'll set up these institutes. Pakistan already has them. Training for judges, training for civil servants in the law, and backed by the police. So the police is always under the control of the civil service. This could have happened. No one's thought this thing through, and therefore we are facing what we are facing. Now, whether McChrystal goes or doesn't go, watch Afghanistan. It's going to unravel very fast. I predict that today. Because McChrystal was one finger in the dike, in the plug, plugging the dam. And what's going to start happening, I'm hearing all the Afghan responses. The Afghans who admired this man because he was the one man who spoke to them in their language. He spoke to them in a code that they understood, and he was able to pick this up. If he goes, there's going to be a huge vacuum of leadership. It'll take months before we are back to some kind of momentum, and no one knows the strategy yet.